For so many years, I hated my phone. I'm going to share with you an experimental idea that has finally stopped the urge to keep checking my phone and reduce my screen time by nearly 70%. I want to start this video by reading you a diary entry of mine from nearly 2 years ago. 4:15 midnight and I reached for my phone just to see if anyone had emailed me in the last 17 minutes since I last picked it up. I don't even want to do this. 10 seconds after my alarm clock went off, I started reading the news headlines. Nothing good can come from this. In the evening we watched Home Alone. I was curious to know why Macaulay Culkin divorced his parents.
Look what you did, you little jerk!
I hate my phone. I fantasize about its destruction. What you can see in this diary entry is that I'm starting to track how I'm using my phone and where my frustration is coming from. And this was absolutely fundamental to me changing how I use my phone. It's an idea that I talked about in a previous video, but the first step to me overcoming my phone addiction was to notice the cues. In his book Indistractable, Nir Eyal talks about paying attention to the internal and external triggers that compel you to use your phone. External triggers are things like text messages, phone calls, but it was the internal triggers that I really struggled with. Why couldn't I watch a movie without checking my phone 5 times? Whenever I felt an internal trigger to look at my phone, I would write down the time and what it was that triggered this feeling. There were times during the day, particularly in the evening, I noticed that my phone use made me more miserable than other times. Armed with this information, I decided to carry out an experiment. I decided to apply the principles of the intermittent fasting diet or 16-8 diet to my phone use. If you are unfamiliar with intermittent fasting, the idea is quite simple. You have an 8-hour window in which you consume all of your food. It's also known as time-restricted eating, and it's known to be really good for weight loss. When I applied the principles from this diet to my phone use, I decided that I would stop using my phone at 6 o'clock in the evening, and I wouldn't look at it again until 10 o'clock in the morning. Time-restricted scrolling, if you will. But this wasn't just as simple as me suddenly deciding that I wasn't going to use my phone for 16 hours every day. Years of phone addiction have meant that I was going to need help to try and implement this into my life. And I'm going to share with you my 3-step process. I started by using a timer lockbox. This does work really well, but it is a little bit annoying. The idea is very simply that you open up the device, put your phone into it. You can then choose how long you wish to set the timer to be locked for. Hold down this button here and you get a little countdown timer. Once that gets to 0, the device is then locked and cannot be opened for the amount of time you set it for. The only thing you can do is answer calls with the phone, but you cannot use your phone in any other way. That beep means now we can open up the timer lockbox and retrieve our phone. What I don't like about this device is that it makes me feel like I'm a naughty child and I can't be trusted with nice things. It seems ridiculous that I voluntarily spend hundreds of pounds on my shiny device and I can't be trusted to use it properly, so I have to spend more of my own money to buy this device to stop my compulsive behavior. Another big problem I had with the timer lockbox is that I like walking in nature. Whilst doing so, I will often listen to music or an audiobook. This wasn't possible if my phone was locked away, and I didn't want to take this bulky, ridiculous item out of the house with me. Saying that, I really needed this device as a first intervention to help me implement my 16-8 phone idea, and whilst it's painful, it does work really well. So the next step in implementing my 16-8 phone experiment was to use the Brick app. Within Brick, you can decide which apps and websites you find the most distracting on your phone. You then tap this grey square and then your phone is bricked, meaning that you'll be denied access to these apps and websites until you decide to unbrick your phone again in the same way. The beauty of this was that I could leave my house and go for a walk with my phone, knowing that the most distracting apps such as Instagram, Facebook and email were not accessible, but I could still listen to music, take photos and use the Notes app on my phone, things which I use all the time. Brick is by no means perfect. Setting it up was an absolute nightmare because the app kept crashing, but you do only need to do this once, and once you've set it up, it has worked absolutely fine ever since then. The app is restricted to limiting only 50 apps and websites, which has been fine for me, but I guess that might be limiting for some people. In his book, Digital Minimalism, the author Cal Newport talks about the idea of making your phone a device that works for you rather than against you. And I think as a direct consequence of using the Brick app, I realized that social media apps and the email app were working against me, so I don't have these on my phone anymore. And if I'm honest, once I'd deleted the most distracting apps from my phone and started to turn it into a tool that worked for me, I didn't feel like I needed the Brick app anymore. In its place, there are two things I did instead. The first was to place an elastic band around my phone. I can't remember where I came across this idea, but I do really like it. It serves as both a visual and physical reminder on the occasion when I do mindlessly grab my phone. The other thing that I now do is I have my phone's downtime on between 6 p.m. and 10 a.m. Every time I try and access something on my phone, I'm greeted with this message, which is really annoying. And yes, it is really easy to bypass this and turn it off for the rest of the day. But because I started doing my 16:8 phone experiment nearly 2 years ago, and because there's not many distracting apps left on my phone, it's much less of a problem for me. One of the main problems I had with my phone addiction is that when I started my 16:8 phone experiment using the timer lockbox, I simply switched my addiction to my laptop instead. I wasn't able to use my phone, so I used another device instead. And this is classic addiction behavior, simply replacing one habit with another. It's also the reason why noticing your own behavior is so important. Paying attention to my internal triggers and becoming aware of them was fundamental to curbing my phone use and my wider addiction to wasted time on the internet. I try to make sure that I only look at social media now on a desktop device. I personally don't feel there's any need for me to take it outside of the house with me. And because I know that come 6 o'clock I'm going to stop looking at the internet, I usually find it's the last hour of my working day between about 5 and 6 p.m. that I find myself looking at Instagram, Facebook and YouTube. The amount of time and effort it's taken for me to try and find a solution to my crippling phone addiction really begs the question as to why I feel the need to have an iPhone in the first place. And I think that is a really valid question. Why couldn't I just use a simpler phone which has none of this connectivity? There are certain apps on my phone which I rely on: maps, notes, camera, parking apps. As anyone who has children knows, you need WhatsApp in order to organize your kids' lives. Taking back control of my phone use really was the only option for me. The average person touches their phone over 2,600 times a day. And if this is the epicenter of the attention economy, then it's time to become part of the attention resistance. Pay attention to your behavior, notice your cues, restrict your phone use slowly. If you can eventually adopt the habit of not using your phone for a 16-hour window every day, I guarantee that your life will change for the better. Thank you for watching.